Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. This episode isn't just about Bhai Gurbaksh Singh, who's highlighted many issues in India today. It's not just about the 5 Sikhs who he's protesting for and going on a hunger strike for. It's about those thousands of Sikhs who continue to languish in Indian jails without any charge. Now, just a little about Bhai Gurbaksh Singh. Bhai Gurbaksh Singh isn't a violent terrorist. He isn't a violent revolutionary. Bhai Gurbaksh Singh is simply an Indian civilian who's become so sick and tired of the unjust way that the Indian constitution and the Indian government is treating the Sikhs, that he's been forced upon himself to go on a hunger strike to highlight the plight of 5 political prisoners. But what we're trying to say is that not only do we need to highlight these 5 political prisoners, we also need to look at the bigger picture and look at just how many Sikhs are actually languishing in those jails today. Now, a lot of the protests that have been going on and a lot of the commentary that's been going on and the debates on TV and whenever we talk to people, it's always about the same thing, that these prisoners that Bhai Gurbaksh Singh is highlighting through his hunger strike, they've completed their sentence. In Punjabi they say, "Ini apni saza bhugt liya." But the question we would like to ask is, what sentence are we talking about? Are we talking about some criminals, people who have robbed stores, people who have raped women, people who have gone out and caused havoc, people who have broken the law? Are we talking about these people? No, we're talking about political prisoners. Their sentence, their only crime, in all the research that we've done, their only crime seems to be the fact that they belong to the Sikh faith and they have an allegiance to the Sikh faith. And in order to highlight how these political prisoners ended up in prison, it's important to look at some of the acts that were in place that put them there. Some of the unjust acts, some of the racist, fascist, brutal, tyrannical acts that were in place that put these young people in prisons, and they continue to do so today. So we're going to look at 4 main acts, and we're going to start with the National Security Act. So the National Security Act, now this is what the National Security Act was. And this applied to Punjab from 1985 onwards. The National Security Act empowered the central government to detain a person to prevent him or her from acting in a prejudicial manner to the security of India. Now they saw, we read every day in our Ardas, Raj Karega Khalsa, they saw that as a prejudicial act towards the government of India. And that was enough to put somebody in prison. The National Security Act, where you could go into jail for 1 year, 1 complete year, without any charge. Complete violation of any international fair trial standards. That was National Security Act. Then we look at TADA, the Terrorist Anti-Disruptive Activities Act. TADA was even worse than the National Security Act. So when somebody was charged with the National Security Act and that 1 year was up, then they used to put TADA on them, and this is what TADA was. It was an anti-terror law that was enforced in Punjab from 1985 to 1995. Now this is the important bit. It was in force from 85 to 95 in Punjab, yet people to this very day, in the year 2013, are still in prison under that very act. Even though it was repealed in 95, there are Sikhs in Punjab and across India who are still in jail for that very act. Now, how did TADA work? And it's something that's, it doesn't compare to the democratic, civilized mind. TADA gave the lawmakers and the law upholders wide powers to deal with the public, and this is how they done it. The police were not obliged to produce a detainee before a judicial magistrate. Instead, they could produce him in front of an executive magistrate, and that executive magistrate was normally a police officer. So a police officer was presenting somebody to another police officer to see if they could keep them in prison. The person, again, under TADA could be in prison for 1 year without any charge, again, without any charge. Now this is one of the most sickening parts of this TADA, and you'll realise why there are so many thousands of Sikhs languishing in Indian jails. For the first time ever in the Indian constitution was a confession to a police officer used as evidence in court. Now we all know what kind of things go on in a Punjab police station. Punjab became the only place in India where a confession to a police officer could be used as evidence in court, and we know what type of tactics are often used in a police station. Put me in a police station in Punjab, and if they use those tactics, I'd agree to anything. This is what was in place. The burden of proof was on the innocent and on the detainee to prove their innocence, as opposed to the law to prove their guilt. This is another aspect of TADA. And another crazy part of TADA was the courts were not held in normal judicial courts. They could be held at any place, at any time. The witnesses' identities were protected, so nobody knew who they were. We then look at the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. The Armed Forces Special Powers Act said that anybody at any time could be searched, could be detained or killed if they were suspected of being a terrorist. Even a non-commissioned officer, army officer, could shoot and kill somebody on the mere suspicion of terrorism. This was also in operation in Punjab. We have the 59th Amendment to India's Constitution. What that meant was President's rule, that Punjab's state government could be collapsed at any time and they could be ruled directly from Delhi. Again, all kinds of powers were vested into the law enforcers to pick up these people. Now, all of these acts contain provisions where human rights violations were legal. It, in essence, criminalized free speech. TADA, 59th Amendment, Armed Forces Special Powers Act and the National Security Act, in effect, made free speech criminal. And it made an affirmation towards your faith, especially if you're a Sikh, it made that a crime as well. It violated every international standard for fair trial, every single international standard. Now, if you look at it, and another point, but it shielded anybody who was violating human rights. So if you had a police officer who was going into normal villages and picking up people and taking them to the police station and torturing the crap out of them, then he was protected under all of these laws. India, the self-proclaimed largest democracy in the world, had these laws running for 20 years in Punjab, the polar opposite to the principles of democracy. So people often ask me, and they ask people that I know who are in this field, and they always say, how can you have so many thousands of people languishing in Indian jails when you say they've done nothing wrong and they're a democracy? Well, it's simple. It was made legal. All kinds of arbitrary laws and regulations and acts were enacted so that people like Professor Pullar, people like Bhai Rajoana, people like Jagtar Singh Hawara and all these other thousands of people could be thrown into prison without any charge. And we've seen the same with Bhai Gurbaksh Singh, a man who's trying to highlight something. He's trying to highlight these poor people who are in these jails. Yet he is thrown in jail on Section 309 for trying to commit suicide. Even in the times of the British Empire, when Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was going on his hunger strikes, not that they achieved much, he was going on his hunger strikes, but not once did the British government ever charge him for trying to commit suicide, because they knew he was trying to highlight, he's trying to protest. To this day, somebody like Bhai Gurbaksh Singh is thrown in jail because of this hunger strike. Now, we look at these acts, we look at the NSA, we look at the TADA, we look at the 59th Amendment, we looked at the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, and then we wondered to ourselves, why did people like Bhai Amreek Singh, why did people like Sant Janarjal Singh Khalsa Pindarawale, why did Baba Gurbaksh Singh Manochal pick up arms? Why did they have an armed struggle? Because the whole system was against them. The laws of the land were in operation to make sure they were exterminated. So in essence, you have a criminalized police force, you have a criminalized judicial system, and then you have a whole youth who have nothing but honor left in their lives, because their wives, their mothers, their sons, their brothers, their fathers, they've all been picked up in a legal way and been made to disappear or extrajudicially killed. Jagtar Singh Hawara recently wrote a letter in support of Bhai Gurbaksh Singh, and he said, the world lambasted us when we picked up arms. We picked up arms because we had nothing left. When the police who are supposed to protect you and the politicians, the lawmakers are supposed to protect you, turn on you, and a whole government machinery works to exterminate you, what do? You have to defend yourself, especially when you come from a qawm, from the bloodline of Guru Gobind Singh, who has a history of standing against oppression and tyranny. So Bhai Jagtar Singh Hawara says, we were lambasted in the 80s and we continue to get lambasted for picking up arms, for resorting to arms in order to defend our honour, our faith and our women, our integrity and our dignity. We were lambasted for that. But Bhai Gurbaksh Singh sits there hungry for 2 weeks and he's also thrown in jail. And we're lambasted for that as well. You have a dual system in place. Every time something like this happens, the Indian government lets us know that we have no place there. When we talk about a dual system, we talk about Anna Hazare, we talk about the yoga guy Ramdev. They done hunger strikes and they were seen as patriots, they were seen as nationalist heroes, trying to highlight what was wrong in the country and trying to bring about change. Revolutionary minds trying to do it in a peaceful way. Bhai Gurbaksh Singh tries to do it and he's thrown in the back of a police jeep by 60 drunk police officers like a sack of potatoes. This is the dual system. And all of this is happening in the backdrop of people like Sajjan Kumar, people like Jagdish Tyler, people like Kishori Lal, who have thousands of witness statements against them saying, we saw these people killing Sikhs and they are freed, they're free to go. Kishori Lal, the butcher of Delhi, he himself said, I killed dozens of Sikhs with my butcher's knife. They're all walking free. Yet people like Bhai Rajoana, people like Bhai Balwant Singh Rajoana, people like Professor Davinder Pal Singh Pullet, people like Bhai Hawara, these people are staring at the gallows. These people may be exterminated by the government. So at every level, at every time, the government is telling us that we have no place in India and we have no value there. And to further emphasize this concept and this notion that we have no value in India, let's just have a look at the past week alone. Bhai Gurbaksh Singh, a normal civilian of India, goes on a hunger strike to highlight the plight of thousands of Sikhs languishing in jail. So we've got thousands of Sikhs languishing in jail. We have Bhai Gurbaksh Singh, who's going unnoticed in India. No mainstream channel, no media is picking up this guy. The world quite rightly is celebrating and commemorating the life of Nelson Mandela, a true revolutionary spirit. How many Nelson Mandelas to this day do we still have in our home and nobody is taking notice of them? Bhai Gurbaksh Singh is highlighting all these people languishing in prison. No one is taking notice of Bhai Gurbaksh Singh because he is a Sikh. The Sikhs then take it upon themselves in Punjab to organise a peaceful protest to highlight the plight of Bhai Gurbaksh Singh. Now look at the chain of slavery. Now we've all been to Nagar Kirtans and we've seen the respect that the Panj Pyare have when they're walking in front. They have water spilt in front of them because the Panj Pyare are the representation of the Guru himself. Now if you need any more evidence to know how we are treated in India, the Panj Pyare are leading the procession, leading the protest to highlight Bhai Gurbaksh Singh. The police barricade the march and they take off the dastar of one of the Pyare, one of the Panj Pyare. It doesn't get any more degrading than that. The Guru's roop on that day was attacked. The very essence of Sikhi was attacked when they took the dastar off. And to make matters worse, on that same week, Bhai Gurbaksh Singh is then arrested and sectioned and taken into jail. Look at the chain of slavery that we have going on. Look at the chain of slavery. But we can quite rightly lambast the Indian government. We can quite rightly curse them and we can quite rightly take to the streets and start putting up placards and lambasting the Indian government and saying, look what they're doing to us. But they've laid their cards out. They laid them out in 1947 and they're sticking to their plan. But what if we take a closer look at ourselves as a Qawm? Where's the one place where we should feel safeguarded, where we should feel sovereign, where we should draw strength, where we should draw power? Where's the one place that should be directing us to do things like what Bhai Gurbaksh Singh is doing, to do things like what Bhai Rajoana has done, to do the things that what Bhai Rajoana has done, Bhai Pullet has done, to do things what Sant Janai Singh Khalsa Pindrawali has done? Where's the one place where we should be getting this directive? Is the Sri Akal Takht Sahib. As an institution, it is our be-all and end-all, and we will live and die by the Akal Takht as an institution. But the Jathedar continually has shown us that he has no empathy towards the Panth, and he's shown no courage, he's shown no strength. Courage and strength is one thing. He hasn't even supported Bhai Gurbaksh Singh. He hasn't even endorsed what Bhai Gurbaksh Singh is trying to highlight. He has shown us that he isn't part of this Panth. And although we live by Sri Akal Takht Sahib, we die by the Sri Akal Takht Sahib, as an institution, the Jathedar, I'm afraid we have lost all confidence. And he no longer has the respect or the ability to represent a whole Sikh nation. And to further ratify the point that we have no faith in the Jathedar of Sri Akal Takht Sahib, We have a man, an ex-DGP called Shashikant, who many of you have seen his YouTube video. If you haven't seen it yet, type in Shashikant. This guy has become so sick of Sikhs being treated like a political football, kicked wherever they want, and the government, you know, treat them like raggy dolls and do whatever they want with them. So sick of Badal, somebody like Badal. I mean, there's an episode coming on Badal, and it's enough to highlight Badal in this situation, that when Bhai Gurbaksh Singh was doing his hunger strike, only with the direction of Badal and Samed Saini, the current Director General of Punjab Police, a man who has the blood of thousands of Sikhs on his hands from the 1980s, only with their direction and ratification could those 60 drunk coppers come into the Gurdwara Sahib and take Bhai Gurbaksh Singh. Now imagine if you were trying to do a hunger strike, or imagine in any democratic civilized country, where do police officers turn up drunk and try and take over a peaceful protest? Shashikant becoming so sickened by Badal's politics, by people like Samed Saini, and by the fact that somebody has to go on a hunger strike to highlight people who are languishing in jail without charge, who are languishing in jail even after serving their so-called sentence. He's actually come up and spoke about these things. In 9 minutes, he's talked about how Badal is the person responsible for all the dirty politics being played in Punjab. And he's talked about how the whole system of India, the whole government of India, is operating to demoralise and ultimately exterminate the Sikh Panth. Why does it take an ex-DGP, a Monna, to stand on stage and talk like a Jathedar should be talking? We need to take an intrinsic look at ourselves, and the Jathedar needs to look at himself hard in the mirror, and if he can't step up, then he has to step down. And to conclude, we are often told that we as Khalistanis, or we as people who talk about human rights, we're terrorists and we're separatists and we're aggressive, and the person behind all this separatism, behind all this terrorism and behind all this aggression is that one man, Sant Janai Singh Khalsa Pindrawali. The question I want to ask everybody is this: you have a man on hunger strike being thrown like a sack of potatoes into jail. You have one of the Panj Pyades, the star being knocked off. You have our youth rotting in jail, in their thousands, from Tihar jail to Patiala to Amritsar to Nabha jail, thousands of them rotting in jail. Jaspal Singh Shaheed, the normal 18-year-old engineering student, shot on the streets of Delhi by a police officer, not a single investigation. Bhai Balkar Singh shot, not a single investigation, killed. Bhai Darshan Singh 60 killed in a peaceful protest, not a single investigation. Apparently Sikhs have stopped dying, but there's just 4 or 5 that I've mentioned. Where is Sant? Where is the big bad Sant Pindrawali who is causing all this? If Sant Pindrawali is the fountainhead of all the trouble that Sikhs are facing today, then it should have been finished in '84. 30 years on, and we're in a worse place than we were 30 years ago. We are no more free, we are hopelessly enslaved. And we are hopelessly enslaved because we may no longer have the cream of Punjab's crop, like Sukha Jinda, for instance, intellectuals like Mathra Singh and Bhai Amrik Singh and General Sabeg Singh, Avtar Singh Brahma. We may not have these kind of individuals to protect Sikhs like shields, like they did in the 80s and the 90s. So we have to resort to these kind of hunger protests, we have to resort to these kind of hunger strikes. But that doesn't mean we make a mockery of the hunger strike. We don't make a mockery of the actual process of doing it. Because there have been people in the past who have tried. There have been people like Fateh Singh, there have been people like Janan Singh and Umran Nangal. All these people have, in their different ways, tried to highlight stuff that's going on in Punjab, some for Punjabi language, some for the return of Chandigarh to Punjab. And they threatened to die of starvation or threatened to set themselves alight, and it never came to fruition. They sort of, if you like, bottled it. Still better than me, but they may have bottled it. Somebody like Bhai Gurbaksh Singh has done an ardas, that the resolve that I have got, please Guru Maharaj, take it to the very end. And we share in that ardas, that he does take it to the end. Like Sardar Darshan Singh Feruman, who went on a hunger strike, and ultimately, with great resolve and great strength and great courage and blessing from Guru Maharaj, became Shaheed in his hunger strike, and with it he inspired thousands. So ultimately what we want to say, and as a message to everybody out there, is that until we become free, until we can break these chains of slavery that have been wrapped around our neck so tightly that we can't even breathe, we're at a stage where we knew we had no right to live in India, but Bhai Gurbaksh Singh's story is telling us we don't even have a right to die there. So ultimately what we are trying to say is that until we are free, until we break these shackles of slavery, we will be tormented like this for years to come. And like Bhai Gurbaksh Singh's ardas, our ardas is also this, that it goes to the very end. Takht or takhta, freedom or the gallows. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa.